Hello, welcome to An Extraordinary Life, the show where we deep dive into the challenges of neurodivergent children and their families. I'm your host, Danielle Desiree, and thank you for joining us today.
Our kids are beautifully unique. There's tons of gifts there and tons of beauty in the way that they see and view and operate in the world.
Hi, and welcome to An Extraordinary Life. I'm your host, Danielle Desiree, and I'm here today with Dr. Sylvia Wilson. Dr. Wilson and I will be talking about neurodiverse children and the highs and lows of parenting. Hi, Dr. Wilson. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's good to see you. Thank you for coming on and being our guest today.
Honored. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, as a parent of an autistic child, which I am, I know I spoke to you previously and just resonated with your story of you being a mother to multiple neurodiverse children. And I know with An Extraordinary Life, one of the main goals was to talk about the challenges that come with parenting, the highs and lows with not just neurodiverse children, but all children. So without further ado, if it's okay with you, I'd like for you to just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we go into your story.
Absolutely. So again, yes, thank you for inviting me today. I consider it an honor and a privilege to be here with you, Danielle. And so my name is Dr. Sylvia Wilson, born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I have a doctorate degree in urban education, own a business called MKA Grind, which is a human development coaching focused company. And I'm married. I'm married for about 21 years now to my husband, Thomas, and we have 4 sons together. And so Nehemiah, our oldest, is on the autism spectrum. Our second oldest, Emmanuel, who's 13, is also on the autism spectrum, considered high functioning, Asperger's, but also has ADHD. And our third son is Michael, who's 11. And then we have a 4th son, Judah, who is actually 4 years old. He'll be 5 in December.
Oh, wow.
Keep us busy.
So give me a little background on, I know everyone's different ages, and I don't know who was diagnosed first, but if you can give us a little background on what your story was like when you first heard your son's diagnosis with autism or ADHD.
So I don't think that I knew almost anything about autism at all when we first started having kids. So my husband and I, we got married about 25. We waited about 5 years to have kids. And so got pregnant with my oldest at 30. And it seemed in the beginning that everything, his development and everything was on par. And so I remember that was during the time where Your Baby Can Read came out. And so we had the Your Baby Can Read my dad had bought us. And he was doing well developmentally, even started to do some early reading around the age of 2. But around the age of 2, shortly thereafter, is when we actually had our second son. And so not too long after that, we started to see some regression with him, with our oldest. And so just language kind of shut down. And at first, we just really kind of said, you know what, we think this is because we have another child now. And he's trying to get adapted, trying to understand what's going on. Yeah. And so for a long time, we tried to not really worry too much about it. And then when he got a little bit older, I would say like around 4 years old, it started to be a little bit more concerning. And I think that was the first time, probably actually around, we enrolled him in school. So we enrolled him in early childhood around 5. And so, we heard from the teachers, right? So sitting down, observing him, talking to him, school psychologist came and said, we think that he has autism. And it was kind of said just like that. and for us, not having heard about it, having heard so much about it, I think we were also initially really afraid of, honestly, the stigma of him being a young Black boy in the school system and having a label. And so we, I think, really resisted in the beginning. We did eventually get him assessed at around 6 years old. And that assessment came back as, I believe it was a pervasive speech delay or something of that sort. But again, we continued to have some questions, some issues with social interactions, not understanding dangers and things of that sort. Um, and so he actually did not get diagnosed until he was 8 years old. And so he was diagnosed, we got him reassessed. He was diagnosed with autism as being on the autism spectrum at 8. And then we started kind of, working with therapists and things like that through the school system. And we really initially didn't even want him to go to school because we felt that we just didn't feel like he was going to be taken care of very well. And yeah, like I said, we started him earlier with the early childhood kindergarten. We didn't feel like that went very well. We felt like there were a lot of like stigmas of autism that were kind of being projected on him. Um, so then after he got diagnosed, we decided that we were actually going to do homeschool. And so we did that for about a year. And honestly, that we were taking him still to the school system to get occupational therapy, speech therapy, and things of that sort. And we had a principal come in who sat down with us and said, "This is your son. I've been coming in and observing, and I understand that he is a diagnosis of being on the autism spectrum. And I believe that if you would trust us and enroll him in school, that we have an environment here that will really be helpful for him." And it was the first time I believe that we really had a truly empathetic, caring response from school administration that literally sat with us, listened to us, observed him to see where he was, and said, "Look, if you would just trust us, I guarantee you that we can kind of put some of your worries to rest." And so we did actually enroll him in school, and he did really well. By that time, we had our second son, again, who was school age as well. Our second son was a completely different story. We saw some of the same challenges with him, kind of socially, but verbally, he was still very expressive. Um, we had him in speech therapy. We understood that there was kind of a disconnect with his comprehension when it came to reading and things of that sort. And so he was assessed earlier, but again, nothing, he wasn't diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum. They said, let's keep doing the therapies. Let's kind of, come back a few years and we'll see what happens. So ultimately, he was actually 10 years old when we decided to get him reassessed because we said, hey, he's been going through these therapies for a long time. We see some improvements, but there's still some things that we're concerned about. And he was diagnosed as Asperger, so high functioning autism and ADHD. And there were things that we were really concerned about. One of the biggest reasons, honestly, that we really buckled down and said, let's get him assessed again, was because there was this kind of different interaction that we would get, particularly when we were watching movies. So, for instance, if there was a movie and someone on the movie died, he would laugh, and we would look at him and go, "Manuel, what is going on?" There's this giggle coming from him, and so we would look at each other like, "Why is he? Someone just died. Why is he laughing?" So we were really kind of worried, just even about his social emotional health and things of that sort. And so then when the pediatric neuropsychologist came back and said, in addition to all of these other things that you're talking about with comprehension and things of that sort, um, he's actually on the autism spectrum as well, and he's high functioning. And this is what this looks like. And so he started to talk about the traits. He started to talk about some of the challenges and how he's experiencing things. And then it was just like, oh, it makes so much sense. He has this energy that comes um, up in him when he sees things happen. Like in the movies they were talking about, that maybe there's a tragedy, but because he's having a hard time sorting like what the emotion is and what that should look like, then he laughs because that's the only way that he can kind of get that energy out. And so he said, you don't have to worry about him as far as mental health is concerned. It's okay. This is a typical behavior for someone who is a high functioning autistic. And so it again, his autism looked very different from our first. So we were just very kind of taken back by that. But that that's how they got diagnosed. And so even since then, I think that has caused us to kind of step back and take a look at other family, because for us, we honestly both grew up in the inner city. We grew up poor. And, I think like possibly a lot of communities of color, talking about mental health and going to get help outside about a lot of things is sometimes shunned, right?
Absolutely.
Especially having to interact with different systems. And so I think a lot of the apprehension we had about getting them assessed, or taking it slow with getting them assessed in the first place, a lot of that came from that. Again, fear about the stigmatization of them being young Black boys. Um, so all of that is kind of what caused us to kind of, I think, take our time with that process.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Have you found any issues throughout this journey with the schools with IEPs? And for people who don't
mm,
know, IEPs is individual education plan. So when someone's in school and they need special needs, the school comes up with a special plan. They talk to the teachers, the counselors, um, the support staff, any of the people that the child needs in order to help them be successful. And then
mhm,
they make a meeting with you, with the parents or the guardians, and you come in and you discuss it. You meet with them all together, and you come up with a plan that would fit the needs for your child. So I
mhm,
know for Jordan and I, that was quite the journey, and it was a
mhm,
struggle in order to get a plan that worked. And sometimes not all the people would be there. It might be the counselor missing, or there might be
mhm,
someone else in the support staff missing that was a key person. And we try to tackle the different areas, the behavioral section, the education section. Do they need more time? Do they need to get up and move around?
mhm.
It was always a challenge trying to come up with a plan to meet the needs for my son in school. And I'm just
Absolutely.
curious to know, what was your experience like with that with your kids?
Yeah, absolutely. So with that one principal that came and talked to us, they encouraged us to get the boys in school in the first place. I could say that their elementary journey was good. The school really and the staff wrapped their arms around our boys. There was always services. They were very good at sitting and listening to us and finding out what was going on at home, and some of the accomplishments and things that skills that we were seeing at home, even if they weren't seeing them at school, so that they can kind of get a better understanding of where they were developmentally as well. We had just one incident near the end of elementary for our oldest, where we know that they're learning, and that they're learning a lot. And so that doesn't always, they're not the greatest with taking assessments and tests. So oftentimes when the school looks at their progress, we feel that they're really kind of stating them way below where they actually are. And so there was an incident where, our oldest would get pulled out for reading in a couple of subjects during the day, um, because he was in an integrated classroom. And there was a time where the special education teacher couldn't come to get him. And so he said he's going to have to stay in the class. And so the teacher actually did a science lecture that day. PowerPoint, went through the whole PowerPoint, talked about different concepts, and then gave a quiz. And when we got to the school that day, the teacher literally ran to us in the hallway and was like, Nehemiah sat in class with us during science today. I did a lecture, so I was really concerned about him, his attention and all those things. He took notes, and he said, and when we got to the quiz, he said the only thing that I adapted for him is that I read the questions out loud for him, and I read the options for the answers, and he just gave me the answers. And he said he scored better than a lot of the students. Like he's on the high end of scoring in the class. And we were really excited. We knew that he had the ability to do that. And so the teacher was excited to see that. But then the special education teacher said, oh, so some things are getting through to him. And we just kind of looked at him and said,
Wow.
he's able to learn,
Yeah. Has nothing to do with
the way that
intellect.
he learns is right. The way
Right.
that he learns may be different, and the way that he shows his learning may be very different, but he is learning. But when he transitioned into middle school, it's a completely different story. They literally put him in an excluded class. So he was in a classroom just for kids who had special needs.
Mm.
And a lot of the kids in that classroom had really severe needs. So Nehemiah, he speaks in really short sentences, but he's pretty much, he can take care of himself, right? And so he was in the classroom with some students who needed assistance going to the restroom and because the lowest literacy level in that class was second grade, then the teacher taught everyone on second grade. So then we started getting assessments from the school saying, oh, he's on a second grade level. He's not able to do this, this, and this. And we're saying, no, no, no. If you go back and look at some of his other records, he's fine. He's actually almost on par with his peers. And we got a lot of pushback. They didn't want to give him the assistance needed because we were asking for an aide so that he can actually start to go and be integrated into the regular classrooms like some of his peers. And we can't do that. Where there's no way that we're doing that. We don't have the funding for that. Um, and quite honestly, when we first put him in school in the early childhood piece, there was a battle in which I had to go to the state agency
Oh,
for
wow.
special education to get the district to actually serve him in the way because that's when he got his diagnosis that wasn't autism yet. And they told us, well, if he doesn't get a diagnosis of autism, then we're not going to service him anymore. And I was like, excuse me? We're just going to put him in the regular classroom and he's just inwards. That doesn't make sense. So we had to go to the state agency. And then all of a sudden, of course, they backtracked and said, oh, no, you misunderstood. I said, no, we have emails of what you said to us. So because we had gone through that battle earlier, and now that he's getting older, our second oldest transitioned into middle school, and they were saying, well, he's high functioning. We're not going to give him any services. And I said, well, I know specifically, particularly in English classes, he's going to have a hard time. And if you are asking him, for instance, to, do a persuasive speech, he has a hard time kind of, foreseeing what other people are thinking and understanding what other people may think and how to convince someone else of something. He's going to think of the way his mind thinks. And so those are things that he has a hard time with. So if he had someone that could help him through that process, and they basically told us, no, we're not providing that for him. He can just go ahead and go through the classes alone. And the good news is, we don't flunk students until high school.
What?
So
Horrible.
they basically said that he could have D's and F's all the way through middle school and he would be fine because he's not going to get flunked until high school. And so ultimately, again, this was around the same time that the pandemic came, not too long after that. And we ultimately last year decided to start homeschooling. And so that is the journey that we're on now. But yes, it's we find that, and as someone who also, again, my doctorate is in urban education, and so I've also taught at the local universities in the School of Ed for teachers who are going to be transitioning into the classroom. And I honestly just, there's such a gap between the skills and the understanding and the empathy and the preparation for teachers to really be able to adapt their classrooms, think creatively, and meet the multi-layered needs of students in the classroom. Um, that the education system, like I said, as someone who has taught teachers, is not doing a good job at,
Yeah.
and it's definitely being felt by students and families in the
Oh,
classroom.
yeah. And I mean,
Yeah,
I thoroughly agree
yeah.
with you because I know
Hmm.
with my journey with Jordan, same thing. So it was so hard to get him an aide with him all day. And they wouldn't do
Yes,
that. So instead, they just wanted to put him in a special ed classroom, which they
right.
did, but it was more behavioral. But that wasn't his issue. And then
Hmm.
um, finally, they put him with an autism teacher, and that was a special classroom, and that was much better. But then the problem with that was the fact that um, class was a little bit slower, and he didn't need it that slow because it didn't
Mm,
have anything to do with intellect. His intellect was fine.
mm,
It was like
mhm,
those
mhm.
social skills. So whenever he was able to get an aid, things just flowed. In the main classroom, it
Yeah.
flowed okay.
Yeah.
Or if he was in an autism classroom and they brought the aid in and he was doing
Mhm.
well then, but if they didn't have the aid, oh, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare for a while.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that
Understandable.
all that's been worked out for you, and it
Mm,
sounds like
mhm.
they're in a really good place. But I want to shift gears for a moment. We were talking about us as women and as parents, and everything that you've been through, just going within ourselves, and it makes us take a deep dive within ourselves and look at ourselves.
Mhm.
Can you explain that a little bit more for me? What you mean by that?
Absolutely. I think for me personally, one of the first obvious things with parenting that I knew my husband and I both recognized would have to change is we grew up in a household where, just to be blunt, we got whoopings, right? So if you,
So did I. I know.
you got what, so if, you got out of line or you weren't obeyed or whatever, that was the consequence. And I think really early on with our oldest, we realized that that was not a route that we could take. So I just remember him being probably around 2 years old and doing some, and just like simply patting him on the butt. And he would have what we now understand, because we didn't understand then, but he would have a full out meltdown that would last almost like 90 minutes. And he just couldn't calm down. He was screaming, he was crying, and we were just like,
Mm,
what in the world? And we didn't understand what was happening, but we understood that what we did wasn't going to work,
right.
right? And so it really caused us to take a step back and say, we didn't really have, you know, um, I think the greatest examples of healthy parenting. Um, but what does that look like for us? And it is clear that we're going to have to, kind of deconstruct everything that we've been through as kids and find our own pathway as far as parenting is concerned.
Oh yeah.
And so we had to do really a deep dive into what we wanted parenting to look like.
Hmm.
I think it also gave us a chance to really reflect on what we wish we would have had um, as children, and really intentionally um, continue to push towards that, and creating that space for our children. Um, our second oldest, again, has Asperger's. And again, I think in collaboration with the ADHD, a lot of times when he thinks something, it just comes right out of his mouth.
Oh yeah. I know about that.
And it would, and it's interesting because we'll have, sometimes my mom will be around and we'll ask him a question, or we'll ask him to do something. I don't know, I can do all that, and it's just too much. And then she's looking like, what in the world, right? How are
Yeah.
y'all going to respond to this? And we really just talk them through it, right? It's like, okay, so what's going on? And if it escalates too much, we're saying, well, what are you feeling? Explain to
Hmm.
us, like, what's going on? What, and she, our families are blown away by that kind of parenting. But it really causes us to be, I think, a little bit more intentional, even with our own awareness of where we are mentally and emotionally and how we feel, because it's really hard to be yourself in a low mood and then you have a child who's having a meltdown. It feels so different, right? When you're in that space where everything feels okay, and you feel pretty much at your best, and then there's a meltdown. Then there's that caring and empathetic part of you that just comes out to help them through that process. But when you're already in a low mood, or you're anxious about something, or you're worried about something, and you're struggling with whatever's going on in your own head, and then all of a sudden you have a child who has his own needs and he's going through a meltdown, it has caused us to dig deep.
Oh yeah.
It's caused us to really dig deep. And I think find balance between the two of us as parents.
Mm.
So sometimes, my husband's having a better day than I am, and sometimes I'm having a better day than he is. And we may just have to say, hey, can you please, please help here? that can be challenging as well because um, I feel like our boys who are on the spectrum definitely prefer one of us over the other, depending on what the situation is. So it's not always me and it's not always my husband, but whatever the situation is, you know, kind of want, if it's this, then I want mama. And if
Yeah.
mama is going, I don't know if I can do this right now. And they're going, and can you talk to daddy? And no, no, I want you. And it's like, oh my goodness. And so, you know, I think we've had to learn how to, again, we've had to learn how to forgive ourselves and just realize that we're not always going to have it right and do it right all the time. Sometimes we may be in a space that we make it worse before we make it better.
Absolutely.
And again, just really trying our best to be aware of where we are. One of the things that I love about our kids getting older
Hmm.
is that I feel like they are they are more aware. And so if we're one of us is in a, I know for myself, if I've been in a low mood and I see one of my sons getting a little agitated, and I know, like, okay, there's some sensory stuff going on here, and I don't know. Just being able to say to them, Mama's not feeling that great today either. So I want to be nice, but I'm honest. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I'm not sure I can be as nice as you want me to be today.
Right.
And I've been amazed at how they've been able to respond to that and go, oh, okay. And it's not that they don't, do their thing, but I can tell that they've been receptive
Oh,
and
yeah.
understanding, and I appreciate that. Um, Whereas I think when they were younger, you don't have that level of understanding, and
No.
so
When they're
it's
younger, you're
like
just
I
trying to curb the sensory issues and trying to get them to a
absolutely
place where they're not having these meltdowns because of
yes,
lighting, sound,
yes,
touch, whatever it may be in that moment.
absolutely,
So I understand that, and it's wonderful that you were sharing that because at the end of the day, we're really just our child's safe space. You know,
mm-hmm.
when we're in a low mood, we want to have a safe space. We want to be calmer. You know, they mirror what they see and what they feel. I know I've had times too with my youngest, who's now 16, and
Mm,
he can always tell when I'm in a low mood. Sometimes he can sense it
yes,
quicker than I can. And he'll come in,
yes,
he'll be like, Mama, what's wrong? And I'm thinking to myself, what do you mean, what's wrong? I'm fine. And really, I'm not fine,
absolutely.
but I'm just not knowing that he's aware of it and he's sensing that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I've experienced that too, which is amazing to be in a space where, for me, to be honest, like maybe you're in a room, but you're trying to hide it and you're trying to just let's just get through what we need to get through. And my oldest does this thing now where he will come and he'll say, Mama, give me a hug. It's like, okay. And he gives these really big, like tight, right,
Oh.
pressure hugs. And now we have this thing between us where I'll say, is this hug for me or is this hug for you? And he'll tell me if he senses something with me, he'll
Yeah.
say, Mama, this is for you.
Oh, I love
Or if it's
that.
something that he needs, he'll go, it's for me. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, I
So
love
yeah,
that.
yes, I'm really appreciating um, again as they get older and being able to sense and adapt and just seeing their growth and development. It's just amazing to see that growth and development and maturity in them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've noticed that at every stage, um, it's different. From elementary, it was different what their needs were, to middle school, to high school. And,
Hmm.
as I continue forward, I'm seeing that, okay, well, what may worked in elementary school, okay, well, that doesn't work anymore because this is a different need.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I had to learn that because for a while I kept trying to do
Hmm.
the same things over and over and over again and wondering,
Hmm.
why isn't he responding to this? Why isn't this helping him? This is what we've always done. But
Hmm.
I love the fact that he's starting to be more open to change because, you know, a lot of people that are neurodiverse do not like change.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think routine is kind of a safety spot for them. So anytime it's
Hmm.
something new and different, there's
Yeah.
that moment where it's like, no, I'm not doing that. And what are you doing? And, you
Yeah.
know, um, as he's gotten older, it's been wonderful because I've been able to talk to him and say, I know this is different, or I know, the idea of this you might not be comfortable with, but why don't we just try it and see? Just one time. Just try it and see one time.
Yeah,
And if you like it, we can keep doing it. And if you don't like it, we can throw it out of there and we can try something else. And I've
absolutely.
noticed that he's been more and more receptive and open to that. And,
Hmm.
I try to adopt that myself because I realize when I adopt it as his parent, he sees it and then he's more willing to be like, well, okay, well, mom's doing something different. She's trying something
Yeah,
different. She's okay. So let me ask her about it. He still might not try
yeah,
it, but he
yeah,
might ask
absolutely.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just even to speak to that part of it, I felt really, really guilty for a long time because, you hear and you read and all these things about the structure. Like kids who are on the autism spectrum need this strict structure, and you need to create this structure that's where they operate at their best. And to be completely honest, I've never been able to. My husband and I have never been able to like maintain a strict structure in our household. And for a long time, I felt really guilty about that. I
Mm.
felt like we're failing them. We're not doing this thing right. We're performing at a level where they're going to be at their best and things of that sort. But I feel like as they have gotten older, and we have a group now called All the Wonder, where we're working with other families who have neurodivergent kids, and so we go on field trips and exploratory trips together. And some of what I'm seeing is that our kids are really adaptive, right? So if we say, "Oh, we were going to go this place today," and then all of a sudden the day of or the day before, we're saying, "You know what? We actually changed it because this is not working, so we're going to go here."
Yeah.
They are much more likely to be like, "Oh, okay." Whereas even some of what I'm seeing with some of the other family, and not to compare because everything works, how it works within
Differently
your
for different
household.
people, right?
It's different for everyone. But I do notice that they have a flow of adaptability that I don't see a lot in other kids who are on the spectrum, at least in the group that we're with. And so I appreciate that. It made me start to think we've been thinking we're doing it wrong all this time, and maybe this is what they needed so that they could be a little bit more adaptive. And so it's worked out for us. So I really wanted to say that if there's if you're a family that knows that structure works for your kids and you have that strict structure and that works, that's great. But also to those families out there that may not, try to do this, and no matter how much you try, you're not getting that strict structure that you would like to get in place, to really not be hard on yourselves and to not judge yourselves and to be open to the possibility that the way you flow best is actually what is most beneficial for your child.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's what I love because there is no right or wrong way to do it.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, um, before we start wrapping up, I just wanted to say thank you again. This has been wonderful, and it's always wonderful talking to you. You know that.
Yes, I
But
love talking to you too.
yes. So I wanted you to just give a little bit more about the trips you're talking about you're doing now and the group that you
Mm,
have, if that's okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
So we started a group. It's basically a meetup group at this point called All the Wonder. And it was really, we decided to call it All the Wonder because of the natural state of wonder that we see our boys operating in. We can walk into a room and we're just walking into the room. But when they walk into a room, they're noticing all kinds of intricate details of the room. If there's a table that's a little, unstable, or if there's a
Mm-hmm.
chair, if there's something in the corner, or, a difference in the paint or what have you, they notice it right away. And so we often see them saying, "Oh, mama, did you see that? Hey, daddy, did you notice that over there?" And we're like, "No, no, no, we didn't." And that has been a lesson for us in learning how to embrace life with a sense of wonder. because they come into any space, especially a new space, and they're totally open to, ooh, let's explore, let's see, and they're noticing all of these details that we take for granted. So All the Wonder is a group where we come together twice a month on Fridays, and we're basically going on exploratory trips together. So we've gone on nature hikes together, we've gone to the lake together and done like a beach day. Um, we were going to go to a indoor gym that's actually specifically for neurodivergent kids this week. We'll be going a couple of weeks to the pumpkin patch, right, farm, to
Ooh.
go to the farm. And it's really just, we created it to give our kids, because we're homeschooling, an opportunity to socialize with other kids their age and get some of that interaction. But it's really been a blessing to us because we get a chance to talk with other parents. We're talking today, hear some of their ups and their downs, their challenges, what's working for them, what hasn't worked, and just get support and give support to one another. And that's really been a blessing to us. So, yes, All the Wonder is for any family who has neurodivergent kids in the Milwaukee area in Wisconsin. All the Wonder on Facebook if you want to join or find out what we're doing.
Yes, that's wonderful. I wish I was near you because you know I'd be joining for
I
sure.
know. I
Oh
know.
gosh. Well, before we wrap today and go, um, throughout your journey, just reflect for a moment. If there was anything out there that you would like to share and say to other parents, you give them hope, to encourage them, to support them,
Mm.
anything of that nature, what would it be that you would want to say right now?
I'm going to repeat something that was said to me recently that just really had a profound impact. Um, Talking to another parent who has a child who's in her 20s now, who is also neurodivergent, and he said, remember that you're not here for your sons. Your sons are here for you. And when I got a chance to really sit and think about it, I said, wow, that's just awesome. And it's so true. Because I feel as a parent and as a person, I have learned so much about the human journey, being able to having the privilege of parenting neurodiverse kids. And in the beginning, that wasn't necessarily my viewpoint, if I'm honest. There was a lot of the worries, there's a lot of the anxieties, there's a lot of, you know, if for any parent out there that's ever felt guilty for just wishing your kid was normal, right? I've done that too. But that they are normal. Our kids are beautifully unique. There's tons of gifts there and tons of beauty in the way that they see and view and operate in the world. If we would just take time to observe and appreciate it. And from experiencing that through our sons, it has just helped make me a better person. It's helped me to definitely stay humble, be very much more in touch with my own humanity. And it's taught me what real love is, I think, because there's, again, those times where you're just like, I don't know if I could do this. But and it's not always perfect, but you do it. And that's what love is. It's not always perfect. But um, just want to encourage parents to appreciate and love and look for all of the beauty in the journey because there's it's all there.